All right, hey guys. We are looking at events to the Revolutionary War. Hopefully you learned about some boycotts and some protests yesterday and about the Quartering Act, or in our last meeting. Today we're going to be learning about the Sons and Daughters of Liberty and one of our founding fathers, Mr. Samuel Adams. Some of you may have heard of Samuel Adams. It is a brand name of a beverage that your parents or adults might drink. Samuel Adams is a famous beer because the Adams family were a brewing family, and so that name still survives today in popular culture because of that. So we're going to open back up our social studies brain books. I'll pull that up for you so you can see what I'm doing there. Alrighty, going to zoom on past the Quartering Act where we had notes yesterday, or sorry, last time we met. And I'm going to turn to the next new page there. And I'm going to draw me a little dude. And I'm going to call him Sam Adams. He's got a smiley face. He's a happy guy. All righty. And I'm going to say, shh. Secret meeting tonight. Rebels wanted. And I'm saying this because Sam Adams probably wouldn't have had a revolution without him. He formed a group called the Sons of Liberty, Sons of Freedom, with Joseph Warren. And this was a group that got together and organized some of those protests, organized boycotts, maybe encouraged some of the tarring and feathering and the hanging of dummies from trees. So this is his story. I have this book, which is a great resource. It's The American Revolution for Kids. And if you will humor Mrs. Patterson, we're going to have a little story time with Miss Patterson today. Rabble rousing. Samuel Adams knew how to make his voice heard, maybe because he was one of 12 children. His father, a Massachusetts brewer, paid Samuel's university tuition in flour and molasses, and then sent him to apprentice with a successful trader. But Samuel Adams had no head for business or brewing. His passion was for politics. When Parliament passed the Stamp Act, he went into action. He sought out the common people, spending time at the docks and taverns to listen to their opinions and to share his own. The British thought he was a nuisance and a rebel rouser, and kept an eye out for the determined man in his rumpled red cloak. Many of the people Samuel Adams met felt just like he did, that the new acts passed by Parliament violated their rights. They were angry and felt helpless, but after talking to Adams, they didn't feel so helpless anymore. He organized protests to get colonists' messages back to England that they were not going to pay. Boston was in turmoil, and much of it was due to Samuel Adams. He helped to form a secret society pledged to the fighting of the Stamp Act. They called themselves the Sons of Liberty, taking their name from a phrase coined by Parliament's Isaac Barr, who had voted against the Stamp Act. He had said that it would lead to the colonists, those Sons of Liberty, to revolt against their mother country, Britain. The Sons of Liberty got support also from John Hancock, the richest man in New England. The Liberty Tree, a large elm tree in the central part of Boston, became their favorite place to gather and talk. British officials shivered when their carriages passed the Liberty Tree. Its trunk was covered with flyers protesting the Stamp Act. Dummies dressed like the British officials hung from the tree's branches. When the Sons of Liberty groups began to form in other towns, they met beneath other liberty trees or raised liberty poles and held noisy gatherings beneath them. So we are going to draw over here a liberty tree to help us remember what was going on at the time. It's okay if it's not the prettiest tree. Some leaves. Do-do-do-do-do. Okay, and from it, I'm gonna dangle a rope. And I'm going to hang some poor stick figures from it. There's a head, arms, legs. Oh, I'm gonna do another one over here. I need another branch. And on it, I'm going to put some flyers. I'm going to say no Stamp Act, SA. I'm going to put cross out like I'm crossing out the Stamp Act. I'm going to put no taxes or no tax. Alrighty. And then beneath the tree, I'm going to put the Sons of Liberty meeting. I'm going to call those the Sons of Liberty. And then, oh, I should probably label this the Liberty Tree. And over here, I'm going to make a note about the Sons of Liberty and some of the things that they did. So they helped organize protests. That's where people will speak out against something. Boycotts. Again, that is where you refuse to buy the British goods. If you don't buy the goods, you don't pay taxes on them. So boycotts. Okay, so those were peaceful protests and boycotts. Protests are just speaking or marching. Boycotts are not buying things, but they also threatened British merchants. Those are British folks who sell things, and British officials. Okay, so and an example of threatening and harming that we talked about as well was tarring and feathering. Give you a moment to get that down. You can pause the video if you need to. But I don't know about you guys, but the dudes are having all the action. What about it, ladies out there? What were the women up to? Well, the women were involved too. They had their own group called the Daughters of Liberty. So we're going to add those in too because they were involved. There's that word again. They helped with the boycotts because if you're not buying the British cloth, which was a part of the Sugar Act, and you're not buying the British tea and you're not buying the British sugar, well, the women were helping make things so that the colonists could buy their products instead of the British products. So the Daughters of Liberty helped with boycotts by weaving / making cloth. And brewing their own Liberty tea. Their own freedom tea, their own liberty tea. In the more to know for this week, I am putting how to make root beer. That is a brewing that Sam Adams' family would have been involved in. And I'll also put how to make tea there. So if you want to brew your own root beer or brew your own tea or buy some at the Walmart or the store, that's fine too. And pretend that you're meeting with people in secret and talking about the king and saying, what are we going to do about these taxes? And have some fun with it. By all means, have fun with your family and tell them what you're learning about. One big thing that you will hear from this time is a chant from the Sons of Liberty and the Daughters of Liberty. And what folks, kind of the battle cry of the colonists at this time is no taxation without representation. And what that means is they didn't have any say in Parliament. There were no colonists over in England helping to make these decisions. So they didn't feel like their ideas were being represented. It wasn't so much that they would have minded paying the taxes, but because they weren't being represented, they weren't getting any of the benefit of them. So that's what really made them so upset is even after the protests and the boycotts and the threatening and the tarring and feathering, the king and Parliament, still weren't listening. They were not listening and letting the colonists represent their ideas. So the battle cry, I'm going to put it on a big banner down here, no taxation without representation. To tax us without hearing our side of it is wrong. No taxation without representation. Want to hear you chant it out. All right, guys. I hope today you learned a little bit more about the rebel rousing. You learned about one of our founding fathers, Sam Adams. You learned about the Sons and the Daughters of Liberty and how they worked to try and get our voice heard as colonists of the Americas. We will see you next time.